Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, and if you're new here, I'm here to yap about books. It's my favorite thing to do. Today's video, we're going to talk about books that made me feel something, which seems really vague, but it's just that time of year where the holidays are past, the coldness of January setting in. I'm right now very lucky that I get sun right now, but that is not the case for most of January. And this is a time where I need books that really grip me. Maybe they're hard hitting. Maybe they just shock me in some way, but they really make me actually feel something to kind of get past the doldrums of winter. So I'm going to share those with you right now. Most of these are backlist titles because I wanted to recommend things that would be easy for you to potentially get through your library or, Kindle Unlimited or, whatever means necessary. I find that when we're recommending books that have just come out, you're looking at weeks-long waits or, maybe they're not on an ebook sale or whatever the case may be. And so I wanted to be kind of mindful of that in this list. First up is a brand new title though, and I just needed to talk about it. It's Isaac's Song by Daniel Black. I recently finished this book last week and wow. I loved it. If you read Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black, this is the follow-up to that. They are interconnected standalones in that reading Don't Cry For Me definitely excels your experience with Isaac's Song, but they are not mutually exclusive. You can read them in whatever order. You can read one and not the other. You're not going to be completely lost. There are just certain parts of Isaac's Song that hit harder because I read Don't Cry For Me, but again, not a requirement. I actually pulled up my annotations page on my Kobo because I needed to share some of these and to explain why I feel this way. Right out the gate, I think this was on page 2. We know from the very beginning that Isaac's father has recently passed away, so this is not a spoiler by any means. But this line really hit me. If you've ever had a disjointed relationship with someone very close to you that you love but maybe don't always like, this might hit you a little bit. It says, "My father never dwelled in my heart. We weren't close. We didn't speak often. I'd call him on his birthday if I remembered, but if I didn't, it didn't matter. We had built mutually exclusive lives that didn't allow or invite intimacy." Hurt my feelings right out the gate, why don't you? Why don't you do that? And then one of the things that I loved about this book the most was us getting to see Isaac in session with his therapist. She gave him the homework of writing out his story as he remembers it to help him work through some things. And one of the things she says to him in the very beginning is, "We don't create our baggage, Isaac, but we can unpack it. Everyone has agency, whether they use it or not. Nothing has ever happened to you that's greater than the power within you. Blaming others is merely an excuse to avoid activating your own personal strength. It'll never work. No one cares to heal you as much as you need it because that's your job. How smart is it to get mad at a mountain? Either climb it or go around it, but don't spend a lifetime waiting for it to move. Only a fool does that." I read that line, I closed the book, and then I just stared out into the distance for a good 5 or 6 minutes because initially it gave me that knee-jerk reaction of no, the other person is responsible for the words that came out of their mouth or the actions that they had, and they are, and she acknowledges that through their sessions. It's not entirely putting the blame on him for the way his life is or anything like that. But I love that she did put the onus on actively being a participant in your healing on him, because that is such an important piece, and it's one of the hard things of therapy and just doing the work, because you have to do the work. Your mom's not going to undo the burdens that she gave you. Your dad's not going to undo the burdens he gave you. They're not going to do the work for you. You have to do your own work. Now, you can ask for things of them. You can share how you feel. You can share how their actions made you feel. But you can't control what comes from them. And you can't control whether or not they're going to do anything about how they made you feel. I loved his therapist's interactions with him. At times, I was screaming yes, snapping my fingers. At other times, I was groaning and mad at her, just as mad as he was at her. But it's an excellent story. All of the books I'm going to talk about today all have pretty significant content warnings. But I would say if you're the kind of person who will look at a list of content warnings and then will shy away from it, not because you're going to be triggered by it, but because you just don't want to read about hard things, I would implore you to maybe give that a second thought. Take care of yourself, do what you need to do, but sometimes the stories where someone's dealing with hard things are the ones that teach us the most. So that's what I'll say about that. Next on my list is The Gifted School by Bruce Holsinger. This one's definitely a little bit more light in its energy. I loved this book when I first read it, I think in 2019. So it came out July 2019, and I feel like I read it right when it came out. I remember it being a book of the month pick, and at the time I was a subscriber. I loved this story. It felt very much like if you mix... Oh, what's that Leanne Moriarty book that became a HBO show? I'll put the show right here. I can't think of the title right now, but it's like those moms who kind of become friends, but also they don't really like each other, and their kids are at the same private school, and it's like lots of drama. It's kind of that energy, except these parents, generally speaking, like each other enough. They hang out. Their kids are friends, and there's this gifted school in Colorado that's opening. It's going to be in their neighborhood or near their neighborhood, and they're all trying to get their kids in, and they're all like taking their kids through these different tests, and their kids kind of feel the pressure, but then the parents are also kind of not putting pressure on them, but pressure on each other. It is very dramatic. It is very wild. You will feel like you're watching a Shonda Rhimes produced show while you're reading this. So if that's the kind of energy you need, I highly recommend The Gifted School. So much drama. I remember the third act of that book. Whiplash. So much whiplash. So many things going on. Some of it will feel obvious, but it's the execution and it is the character reactions that you're there for, not so much the plot itself. Because some of it is just obvious because you're in a like rich people behaving badly kind of vibe a little bit. Not all these people are uber rich, so I'm careful about not completely calling it that, but there's an air of that in this. And it is so good, so I highly recommend it. Okay, going back to something that is definitely hard-hitting, A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. This came out, I believe, also in July of 2019, or just 2019 in general, maybe not July. But I just remember reading it, devouring it, and just having to sit with it for quite some time. So this follows Isra, who's a 17-year-old in Palestine in 1990, and she is being married off to a man who I want to say is like 10 years older than her. And in a lot of Muslim culture, I don't want to like put everybody in the same box, but I know that generally speaking, this is a thing where the eldest son tends to be like the new patriarch of the family in a way. So like once they're kind of established, they're married, they have kids. So like when your parents get elderly, like the parents come and live with the son if they weren't already continuing to live together anyway. And so the daughter that comes into the family, like the daughter-in-law, is the outsider and just kind of has to become accustomed to this family, because not only do you have the husband who she's supposed to, you know, respond to and be obedient to, but then you're also dealing with like your mother-in-law is not only like there, but she, like she lives down the hall. Like it's not I can only see her on Christmas and Thanksgiving situation. Like she is there. And then maybe the father's there too if he's lived this long. Anyway, that's kind of the vibe of the story. Her relationship with her husband is not good. It is definitely one of an abusive nature, which has, I think, in especially in modern times, been a concern of arranged marriages. But I don't want to condemn like a culture for that, because I personally know people whose parents were in arranged marriages and their parents love each other. Did they love each other in the beginning? No, they had to like grow to know each other and like kind of get there, but they were not in troublesome situations. And so I don't want to have you hear me say like this book was so good and these things were really challenging, and then like mentally go and like, oh, I'm going to condemn this thing, because I don't think that's true. But I think that we do need to be aware that that's a possibility, and this situation is one of them. So we follow her dealing with that. And then the second timeline is actually following her daughter in 2008 in Brooklyn. I think she's 18 at the time. Her name is Dea, and it's her kind of learning about her parents' story and dealing with a lot of complicated feelings there. And I believe her grandmother is trying to set her up on dates to meet men for a potential arranged marriage. And this story is really complicated. It is deeply sorrowful, but also at times weirdly inspiring, and lots of perseverance, a lot of pain. It's a difficult one, but it is highly worth it in my opinion. I think that the cost of entry is not super high, but the story is a little bit, but it's intense. It's really intense. So if you need that level of I need to feel something, do it. It's so good. It is so, so good. I believe that book was up for several awards, and honestly, it should have been. It's, like I said, it's heartbreaking, and it's about a really tough topic, but just the perseverance as a human condition is something that continues to shock me on a day-to-day basis at times with the things that people go through that look nothing like your life. And I think it's important that we read about things like that. Okay, last is not so much a book recommendation, but an author, and it's Fredrik Backman, who gets a lot of hype on booktube, and I think he should. I have 3 books/series that I recommend from him. So the first is A Man Called Ove. If you have not read A Man Called Ove at this point, where have you been? I still refuse to watch a Tom Hanks adaptation, not because I have anything against Tom Hanks, but I've heard that it is awful in comparison to the book, and I have such a special place in my heart for that book. I love it because Ove is not a lovable main character. He's not. He's a cantankerous, awful old man, and you slowly learn why he has become the way he is, but it's very easy to not like him in the beginning of the book, and I actually see people rate this book like a 3 often because of that, and I'm just like, not everybody has to be likable. That doesn't mean the book is bad, because Fredrik Backman's writing is incredible. His writing, for me, automatically makes any book of his like a 4 to start with. Like, you're already up there. You've already gained going all the way up to a 4 from no stars, just on the strength of his writing alone. And I think that we get to see Ove get like this new zest for life, but not like in a cheesy way. I love the interaction he has with his new neighbors. That's the catalyst for him kind of becoming a person again. Is his neighbor has a like 5 or 6-year-old daughter who is so precocious and always all up in that man's business. And the woman is really struggling with being, I think she's like 8 months pregnant when they move in. And I believe her husband's like at work all the time. And then she's trying to find a job, and it's like a whole thing. And so he ends up kind of becoming a babysitter for this little girl. And he is really going through it. His wife has passed away, and he's dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of struggle with that. And so watching him get to see the world through that little girl's eyes and kind of deal with his own struggles and letting these people who are not his family love him, I loved it. It's so good. So good. If you are in the energy of winter where you're like, not only do I need to feel something, but I would like to cry buckets, okay? I would like to turn into a crying girl meme. I recommend In Every Morning, The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. Content warnings here for dementia and Alzheimer's. This is about 3 generations of family, specifically the men in the family. So there is the grandfather who is suffering with dementia, his son, and then his grandson. And you just get to see them through these different vignettes where the son and the grandson kind of swap spots throughout, as the grandfather is going through these different stories, or they're telling stories about things they experienced with their grandfather. But because of his illness and whether or not he's lucid through some of these, like there are times where he's like confusing the two of them, or he doesn't know who they are at all. It is heartbreaking. It is beautiful. It is the best catalyst for a cathartic cry. That book is maybe 170 pages, I think. It's a little novella. So you can definitely do that in one sitting. And so if you need to cry some buckets, if you need to, sit with some Kleenex, that's the one. That's the one. And then this next one is also in that same vein as far as wanting to cry, but is a much longer experience. It's the Beartown trilogy. I think I'm going to reread this winter. I haven't read it in a long time. Like, I read The Winners when they came out. The 3rd book came out in 2022, maybe. It took a little while for it to come out, but when it did, I immediately picked it up, dove right in. I love Beartown so much. It starts off with the star hockey player of the local hockey team being accused of sexual assault with the coach's daughter, and it divides the town. But then you also have the ongoing rivalry between the hockey teams, and it's just it's not about hockey. So if you don't care about sports, that's fine. This is about a small town. This is about believing women. This is about consequences. This is about the complicated nature of being the town hero and then now the town pariah from both sides. And it's chaotic. It's heartbreaking. It's beautiful. It's 3 books long. that main story arc is kind of just in the first one, but then other things you see carry on into books 2 and 3. You're going to follow this whole cast of characters. You will love them. You will hate them. You will root for them. You will cry for them. Incredible. There's a big ass snowstorm that's supposed to come through like most of the US again. We just had one a week and a half ago, and I'm in Texas, and we saw several inches of snow, which is wild. I will insert some clips here if I still have them on my phone. It was a lot for my area of Dallas. We do not normally see that. And another one's supposed to come through. I don't think we're supposed to get any precipitation, but the rest of the country is. So if you find yourself snowed in and you've just watched this recommendations video, get into Beartown. It's so good. I think it's on Kindle Unlimited right now. I feel like Kindle Unlimited right now is doing this thing where, this happens every year. We're usually either in winter or summer. They get paired with the big 5 publishers to get some of those books temporarily put on Kindle Unlimited for a while. Like I saw the Gideon the Ninth, like that series, all on Kindle Unlimited right now. The Poppy War series, all on Kindle Unlimited right now. I think the Jade War series, like just really popular, like 3-book series are on right now. And I feel like I saw Beartown on there, but I could be wrong. Check it, get into it if you have it. Great way to dive into some books without a wait time. But otherwise, check out Libby, your local library, whatever method you use to acquire your books. And let me know if you end up reading any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts and your feelings. And I will be back with another recommendations video soon. I have a whole series of them that I'm working on. So stay tuned, and I will see you next time.